Hi explorers, it's Mr. Peterson. Check out my gear today. Where do you think I might be headed? If you said I'm headed on an exciting adventure to the Wildlife Refuge, you'd be correct. We are at a special place called the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge in Trenton, Michigan, to help me start a research project that is focused on the question, how are wetland, forest, and prairie habitats similar? Before we get started on our research, I want to talk to the refuge manager, Dan Kennedy, about what the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge is and what makes it unique. Hi Dan, thank you for having us here at the refuge. So what do you do here at the refuge?
Well, first, welcome, Brian. We have three main purposes. We do fish and wildlife conservation, primarily associated with the Detroit River. Wetlands are our primary focus. Second, we connect people to nature. We have a bunch of community engagement programs where we work with the community to have them appreciate nature. And third, we're building a program to work with our Canadian partners on managing a joint resource, the Detroit River. Each country owns a little bit of the Detroit River, and so we're trying to work collaboratively with our Canadian partners.
That's amazing. So what makes this refuge unique?
We have quite a few things that make the refuge unique. Our big draw is Humbug Marsh. Humbug Marsh is an internationally recognized wetland, and it is the last mile of undeveloped land on the Detroit River on the U.S. side. So it's really unique, and it's a great resource for bird watchers or kayakers and all that stuff. Second, this used to be a Chrysler plant. We're standing on property that used to be a Chrysler plant that was decommissioned in 1990 and then restored to what we see today, which then brings me to our third unique thing, and it's the John D. Dingell Visitor Center, which we honor the congressman who this wouldn't be possible without his efforts.
Thank you, Dan, for that wonderful information. It's really going to help me with my research project.
You're welcome, Brian, and good luck with the project.
Now let's get started on our adventure as we gather information around our big question. Let's take a walk and record or write down some notes about what we observe in each habitat. Observations are an important way to gather information for our recordings. This is a wetland habitat. It's a wetland habitat because there's usually water. This wetland habitat is known as Humbug Marsh. Let's make some observations and record them. The first thing I noticed is there's some ducks and some egrets. I'm also noticing these turtles up on the log. When I look around at the plants, I see there's a number of different aquatic plants. I see cattails, I see swamp milkweed, and I see purple loosestrife, which is an invasive species. And if we listen, we can hear there's lots of insects. These dead trees in the wetlands provide homes for some animals and a great hunting perch for birds like the kingfisher. All right, let's head out to our next habitat. This is a forest habitat. A forest habitat contains trees and undergrowth like small bushes and other small plants. Let's observe and see what we can find in this forest habitat. This is a tussock moth caterpillar whose host plant is milkweed. This is pokeweed. You want to be very careful with this plant. It's poison ivy. This centipede lives on the forest floor. Up in the trees, I see a blue jay. These trees are dead, but this helps provide a home for some of our forest animals. All right, let's move on to our final habitat. This is a prairie habitat. A prairie habitat contains low-lying grasses. Let's explore and see what we can find here in this prairie habitat. Here we see goldfinches and dragonflies. We also see common milkweed, which is a host plant for one of our favorite butterflies, the monarch. Here we see some species of bees. Now that we visited a wetland, a forest, and a prairie, and recorded our observations, we can look at what we recorded to help answer our big question. How are wetland, forest, and prairie habitats similar? We noticed ducks and egrets in the wetlands and blue jays in the forest, and goldfinches in the prairies. These are examples of different birds. We found swamp milkweed in the wetlands, and we found common milkweed in both the forest and prairie habitats. We found insects in all three habitats. We also found dead trees or dead plants in every habitat. These dead trees and plants actually provide home for a lot of animals and even some food. So, you can see that by taking a walk at the Detroit River International Wildlife Refuge and recording observations, I was able to get a great start on my main research project question: how are wetland, forest, and prairie habitats similar? Observations and recordings are powerful tools. Writers, such as scientific writers, use the power of observation and recording to help provide research for their writings. Now I can use the information from my observations to help me plan the next steps in my research project. How could you use observations and recordings to help with your next research project? Once you have an idea, grab some paper, get a writing utensil, and get out there and explore.